Hey everybody, this is John for Pioneer Nexus MTG, coming at you with the top 5 deck lists or decks for the Pioneer format at the beginning of August here. Now, this is subject to change next week as the annual ban announcement that Wizards has gone to will be taking place on the 7th. Basically means the format could be shook up. Don't know that the Pioneer format needs a lot of shifting, as the format has almost become somewhat self-regulating, with the long-standing Rectus midrange no longer being at the top of the heap. That said, people might want to see Karn the Great Creator or Fable the Mirror Breaker go, shake up the format a little bit. But that said, let's get into the top 5 decks as they currently exist. Number 1, or 1A, Mono Green Devotion. This deck has been at or near the top of the heap since the banning of Winota, and even before then it was a substantial deck with Pestilent Cauldron's Infinite Combo. This is the ramp deck of the format, the Tron Light of the format for lack of a better term. It's centered around Karn the Great Creator, a bunch of mana dorks, accelerating quickly into very powerful plays, Karn being at the centerpiece of all of it, Storm the Festival being your other payoff, which usually you're looking for Karn. You have your early mana accelerators with Mystic, Land of War Elves, and Wolf Willowhaven. You have Kiora here to round out the ramp package. Then you have your Devotion / mid-ramp package, Polukranos Reborn, Old Growth Troll, and Cavalier of Thorns. And then you have Oath of Nissa to kind of tie it all together. Nykthos Shrine to Nyx to allow you to do ridiculously powerful things with all the mana pips you have going on. And then you have an answer for pretty much everything in the sideboard at the expense of not really having a sideboard, but, you know, having access to those cards in Game 1 and swing a lot of matchups, like Lotus Feel combo, for instance, your way. 1B, Rectus Sacrifice. Now, this is the deck that is largely taken over for Rectus midrange. Has a lot of the same matchup spread, a little bit different things around the edges, but this one's a little bit more low to the ground, picks on creature decks just a little bit more, uses things like Claim the Firstborn and Fatal Push to clear out your opponent's board. Then it chips away at damage with things like Cauldron Familiar, Unlucky Witness, Bloodtithe Harvester. And then the coup de grace is usually Mayhem Devil. When you're sacrificing all these various different things, you get to ping your opponent or ping their creatures, keep their board clear. When you're already a deck already built around the concept of sacrificing everything. As far as sacrificing, your ability to do so is heavily dependent on the cards Witch's Oven, Daily Dispute. Sometimes you'll see other things in the lists, but these are the main two that you see throughout most lists. Unlucky Witness is a little bit of cannon fodder with card selection. Bloodtithe Harvester is a removal spell and an early threat. Kroxa is a way to get value off of your graveyard besides Cauldron Familiar. Bear, Hive of the Eye Tyrant, Takanuma, Sakenzin, Ramanap Ruins. Some versions play Castle Vantress. Or Castle Lockway, not Castle Vantress. And then sideboard, you have a bunch of cards primarily for the other mid-range and control decks, as those tend to be your little bit weaker thing, as you tend to go a little bit smaller than Rectus mid-range. That said, you do have a pretty good Rectus mid-range matchup, which has been part of the reason why it's declined, as well as the presence of Mono Green rising up on the format again. And probably I'd be willing to bet a lot of Rectus midrange pilots switch to Sac to have something a little bit different whilst maintaining a good bit of their key cards. And then, you know, a smattering of other removal spells to kind of round out your suite against other creature decks or combo decks like Abzan Fang. A deck that is somewhat surprising because of the presence of Rectus Sac, but does also have a very good mono green matchup. So you're kind of back to that rock, paper, scissors that Pioneer had for such a long time, where you'd have like aggro deck, Rectus midrange, mono green, kind of holding each other in balance. This time, the deck that rises up, blue-white spirits. This is mono blue spirits with a little bit of a twist. Basically, in the main deck, usually it's just Spell Queller, sometimes Catilda to help against other aggressive decks. Invasion of Gabagook, Gabadagon, whatever you want to call it, helps to protect your creatures. But beyond that, you just have a bunch of soft counter spells, things like Lofty Denial, Geistlight Snare, buys you some amount of time while your flyers chip in, slip out the back to protect your creatures, and of course, Curious Obsession to help you refill on cards. So this is just your quintessential flash tempo deck, and then has some grindy cards or customizable answers in the sideboard to help against other aggressive decks, which are kind of your main weakness, in addition to decks like Rectus and Rectus Sac. Number 4, Lotus Feel combo, kind of the tried and true combo deck of the format. Not as flashy as Grease Fang, not as explosive as Mono Green, but still slow and steady wins the race. Doesn't really care much about creature removal. Is the closest thing you get to a true spell-based combo deck in the format. You know, you get your Lotus Field into play, you copy it with Thespian Stage, you do broken things with it. What you do with it just depends. Chandra Hope's Beacon is one of the new one-ofs that have been popping up more and more. Dark Petition as a way to kind of tie it all together. Main deck, your win cons are a little bit thin, but you know, you still have various different ways to win the game. I still, whenever I play this deck, almost always forget how to win the game without access to Master's Acquisition or Fae of Wishes to get Approach of the Second Sun, but most people have moved away from that and instead choose to win with Lair of the Hydra or many other different win cons. I think currently Chandra is one of the main ways to win the game, but I'm not quite sure how the current win con works. But basically, it's the same engine, different pieces to finally finish the equation. But Impulse, Hidden Strings, Pour of the Pages, Vizier, all are kind of common fare. Balagid as well, a way to recover key cards, and also an extra land in addition to your 22 land drops. Passaging on the Water will allow you to play through hate cards like Damping Spear, such as out of Mono Green sideboard. Lotus Field combo, one of the more difficult decks to pilot consistently, but is a powerful, rewarding combo deck and is unlike most other things in the format. Comes in at number 4. Number 5, Blue-White Control. This kind of gets split up into two camps, really, with traditional Blue-White Control doing a little bit better more recently. For a little bit in the middle to early of last month, the Lotus Field version was popping up, which was more like a combo deck, you know, just playing big sweepers and trying to do that kind of thing. But basically, Blue-White Control, good counter spells, good sweepers, terrible spot removal, good planeswalkers. Lay Down Arms is one variant of the deck that I've liked in the past, just as a better removal spell. Allows you to remove a lot of different things. However, it is sorcery speed, and requires you to play a lot of basic planes in your deck, or at least planes adjacent lands, whether that be, you know, additional dual lands such as Irrigated Farmland, some of the tri-lands, etc. You know, what's not to say, it's slow and steady, blue-white, it's done well, continues to do well, doesn't really have many terrible matchups, doesn't really have many great matchups, is kind of Rakdos-esque in terms of, you know, it's not really terrible in the format, but it's never really truly fantastic. But dedicated pilots continue to do well with it, so it is number 5 on our list for August. Once again with a bullet, because there's a ban restricted announcement next week, and you never know when Wizards might decide to shake things up.